And hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we'll be talking about the SVG element. If you haven't seen my last video explaining a little bit more about it, please go watch it, just a little bit of backstory about it. Now, SVG is basically a box. It is almost like the div tag, but it is specially made in order to keep types of drawings like circles and stuff. So the first thing you have to do is you have to set the width and the height of an SVG. Now, just like a div, it's basically the same, it works in pixels. Basically everything we're going to be working with is going to be with pixels. Now you won't automatically see an SVG, you have to add some CSS to it. So just say style, border becomes 1px solid black, and you will be able to see it and be more in hand with it, so you can see until where it can go and stuff like that. Now as you can see, after we set the width and height of the SVG, you can actually see it with the border. Now let's just change up the width and height so we have enough space. This is not per se good practice, but putting it as big as possible also gives you a huge amount of space you can draw on, and for the purpose of this video we'll be doing that. But we won't be making it that big, we'll just be making it big enough so you can see it fit inside of the screen. If you need or want to, you can make it as big as you want, it has no actual limit. But when you make one, you should make sure to make it just as big as it needs to be and not any bigger. Okay, so next up, inside of the SVG tag, we're going to create a circle. To create a circle, we need a circle tag. Most elements in an SVG is self-closing, so you don't have to worry about closing them with another element of the same name. First up, we have the CX. CX is x-axis from where the circle is, and CY is the y-axis from where the circle is. We'll be explaining this a little bit more later. R, which stands for radius, is the actual size of the circle. Remember, all of this is still in pixels. As a beginner, I suggest you just create a few comments to help you remember these things, and yeah. Now next up we have the fill attribute. Now the fill attribute is basically the color the circle will be, or the color that any of the shapes will be when you draw them. Let's make it green, and when we refresh the page you should see a green circle. So let's just add this comment in here that says fill is the color of the circle, and in stroke we'll explain more about that later. It's kind of like the border of the circle. Let's refresh. As you can see, we have a green circle. Now let's quickly explain the X and Y. This is the y-axis. It starts from the top left corner, and that is the x-axis, also starting from the top left corner. As you go more down or more right, it changes the amount, it increases it. So let's change the x-axis, and you will see the circle moves a little bit to the right because we set the x-axis to be a little bit further from the point, which is 0. The y-axis will make it go downwards because the point, which is 0, the top left, is now 400. The radius will just increase the size, and we can also change the fill color to any other color we want. Let's make this white and then give it a stroke of black so we can see just a black circle stroke. As you can see, we just have the outline, which is black. Next up we have something a little less complicated than a circle, a rect element. Now rect can make anything from a rectangle to a square to anything that has basically 4 sides. Now this has a width and a height attribute, which makes it slightly easier than a circle's just radius, because we have the CX and the CY, which can confuse you into thinking that's the size, which it is not. Then you have the X, which stands for the x-axis, from how far from the top left, it should go right. And then the y-axis, from how far from the top left downwards it should go. And then we have the fill and the stroke, which is basically the same as with the circle. Now if we refresh, we can see a red rectangle with a black stroke. Now don't get confused, because this is just an X and that is an CX. They both mean the same thing. One is just made specifically for a circle, the other one is made for a rectangle. To prove it, we can test it out and change the X and Y axis a little. As you can see, it's kind of having the same effect as with the circle. Now the SVG is basically a box, so if you're going to make it go further than the box itself, it's going to cut it off. So this is why you should resize it to whichever size you need it to be. Now you can also change the y-axis, which is just the rectangle's way of saying CY, but it's just a Y. Now this was quite a lot to take in one video, so I suggest you just go practice this a little bit, because we just want to get this ingrained into your head. In the next video, we'll be discussing things like the lines, which is a little bit different, a little bit harder than this, polygons, and ellipses, and then you guys can learn a bit more about all of these things. But for now, just try and study this, because this is going to be a little bit, this is like easier than the next video is going to be, and it's a little less to take in than the next video. So if you got this under your arm, then the next video shouldn't be so hard. Thank you all for watching. See you all in the next video.